Good evening. I'd like to call to order this meeting of the New Bern Historic Preservation Commission for November 2018. Morgan, would you like to call the roll, please?
Yes. David Griffith.
Here.
Joseph Anderson.
Here.
Ruth Cox. James Woods. Karen McNair.
Here.
George Brady.
Here.
Jim Bisbee.
Here.
Joe Klotz. Christian Evans. We do have a quorum.
Very well. All right. I'd like to see, Morgan, do we have any minutes to review this week?
Not this evening.
Okay, very good. And I'll just provide a little introduction to everyone here as to what we'll do in this meeting tonight. The Historic Preservation Commission, or HPC, is a public commission appointed by the City of New Bern's Board of Aldermen. It's responsible for preserving and safeguarding New Bern's locally designated historic districts, that's downtown and Riverside. And it's based on U.S. Department of Interior standards, state statutes, city ordinances, and New Bern's historic guidelines. Two of the major tasks of the HPC include approving applications for certificates of appropriateness, or COAs, and preventing demolition of historic structures due to neglect. The HPC holds a quasi-judicial hearing on an application for a COA. The Commission hears sworn testimony and evidence provided by the applicant, by parties who receive notice of the hearing, and by others who can justify that they have relevant evidence and are directly affected by the application. The Commission cannot consider comments based on personal likes or dislikes, hearsay, or personal opinion that cannot be directly related to specific historic guidelines. Likewise, commissioners shall refrain from stating personal opinion, personal likes or dislikes, or hearsay during a hearing. The Commission's decision on an application is based solely on testimony and evidence presented at a hearing that directly relates to the historic guidelines. Morgan, would you like to swear in anyone who might be speaking tonight?
Yes. All right, guys. If you're going to be presenting, speaking, commenting, everyone just come forward and one group. All right, guys. Okay, guys. Right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give this evening is true to the best of your knowledge?
I do.
Okay, guys. Thank you. Have a seat.
Very well, thank you. Here's a little summarization of how the hearing process is going to work for each application. First off, Morgan, the HPC administrator, provides an overview of the application. Then the applicant or representative will present the application to the Commission. Proponents and opponents of the application who received notice of the hearing may present evidence. Rebuttal is allowed by the applicant and by proponents and opponents who receive notice. Others who can justify that they have relevant information will be directly affected can present evidence. The HPC administrator will present the staff's findings and recommendations. The applicant or representative will then have an opportunity to make any final comments on their application. And then we as commissioners will discuss the evidence, may ask for clarification from the applicant or presenters. Eventually, the chairman will call for a motion to approve or deny the application with stated findings of fact. The motion is discussed by the commission, and the chairman will call for a vote on the motion by the commission. A COA can be approved with conditions, or denied. Morgan, is there any other business prior to our first application?
No, sir.
All right, very well. Please proceed.
All right. First up, we have 219 Middle Street. This is a request to include a change to the facade in the primary ABC. This is an amendment to an existing COA, and this is Sarah's project. I'm going to turn it over to her. And what is easier for this, Sarah?
Yeah, it might be easier. Yeah. Good evening. My name is Sarah Afflerback with Go Architectural Design. Let's see.
There you go. You're all set. All set. Okay.
This is an amendment to an existing application, and earlier this year we brought a change in how the front facade was going to operate, and we showed that it was going to hinge in the middle and open up in that direction, and that was approved. During the construction, the header, which was this is what the building used to look like right here. So this was the facade, which is not original to the building. This is a picture from Sandbeck's book, and these three buildings together kind of make one building. But you can see that even back in the 50s and 60s, none of those facades were original to that building. They were all changed. And much like it is now, none of these facades along here, really along any of these buildings, are original to the buildings. This particular one that we changed out, we believed that the header was at the bottom of the existing wood right here. And we looked up there, we saw a piece of steel, and we thought that was the header. So the window was designed around that. When they got into it, they discovered the header was up here, more up by that little roof that sticks out. And so some decisions were made and changes happened to the window. And what came and what was put in place is this window as it sits right now. And what we have done is we've looked at it and proposed that, similarly to what we had originally proposed, which was this was the original header that we were looking at up here, the window now has that header piece with wood. So the entire window here will hinge in the center here, but the top transom portion will be wood, so that when it's closed, it will read very much the same as what we originally had approved. And so the only change is that the entire window here now hinges. And so when it's in the closed position, that will read across there as wood. And then when it's in the open position, that window will sit up in that transom area and more or less fit up in that area. And so we believe that this is not too terrible of a change from what we originally had. And we appreciate you taking a look at this. From the original application, there was also a transom side light for the door, which has also been removed, and now we have a partial light door in that location. So the materiality, the window itself, the divisions of the window, how the window operates were all approved prior. The changes are that the transom piece at the top now moves with the window instead of being fixed. And if you look at the picture down here, you can see this canopy of the building next door. To us, it's actually better to have the whole window be higher up than lower down, so that it's out of any headroom space. It's much farther. It's 1'10" above where it was, which is not a significant change, but at the same time, it sits it up closer to the canopy that is next door. And so that for us, it's the change in the amendment that for something that has already been approved. And that's all I have tonight. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Commission members, I presume there are no conflict of interest issues with any of us on this application, or are there any issues with the completeness of the application? Okay, very well. At this point, I'm going to open this up to public comment for those who would like to speak either in support or in opposition to the application. Before anybody does that, let me just let you know what the rules are. When we talked earlier in the introduction about those who have received notice, that is people who received a letter from the city because they own property within 100 feet of the subject property. When we ask for comment from those who received notice, those are the only people we're going to hear from at that time. Later on, at our discretion, we may hear testimony from other people who we feel might have relevant evidence. So, as a first step here, is there anyone who has received notice that would like to speak for or against the application? Sir, please.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, Commission. John Watson, 217 Middle Street. I live about 3.5 inches away from 219 Middle Street. We actually share a wall. I think the proposal that they've come up with to solve this hinge point on this door is perfectly acceptable. That header piece that's up there, whether the door is whether it's there or if the door is below it, it's going to be hidden when the door is up anyway. So I don't really see a problem with it, and I would recommend that you approve the amendment as it's written.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else, again, who has received notice? Okay. Is there anyone who may not have received notice but feels that they have relevant information on the application that would like to speak for or against it? Okay, very well. Sarah, I presume you don't have any rebuttal to that comment? No. All right. Well, then, Morgan, would you present to us, please, the staff findings and recommendations?
Staff submits the following historic district guidelines as appropriate to this application. Accessibility and life safety, 472, entrances, 441, 443. Statements of reason based on the information contained in the application and staff judgment are: the proposed project is within the primary area of visual concern. The proposed project is not incongruous with the guidelines, and staff recommends the Commission approve the amendment for major exterior alterations at this time. Sign the aforementioned guidelines.
Thank you very much. Commissioners, I think, Joe, you may have been the only one here who wasn't here for the design review presentation on this. So are there any questions you have about what's being proposed, or do we fully understand?
Just a general question, Sarah. Can you tell me about the approximate height when the window is open? I know it's going up a 1.5 feet, which seems like a positive.
So from really from the sidewalk up to where probably the bottom of it will sit is about 8'8".
Okay.
And this is the top of the window here, and so when it all hinges, it will kind of fold up in this area. So from down here to where the transom starts, it's 8'8". So well above door height.
Plenty of headroom.
Yes.
Thank you.
So the window itself, with its upward acting folding operation, is not changing in its function.
Mm-hmm.
The window's a little larger than it was because the hinge point is taller, and they've disguised the top piece now with the wooden paneling in order that when it's closed, it looks just like the wooden panels at each side. In my opinion, it seems perfectly reasonable modification given what's been found. Does anyone have any other discussion or questions? Okay. Would anyone care to make a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion. Excuse me. I move that we find the application for 219 Middle Street.
Excuse me, it's
Wait.
an amendment. Yeah.
Oh,
The
sorry.
amendment.
Correct.
Yeah.
Thank you. I make a motion we find the proposed amendment to a certificate of appropriateness for 219 Middle Street to be not incongruous with New Bern's Code of Ordinance, Sections 15-411 to 15-429, and New Bern's Historic District Guidelines, based on the following specific guidelines and findings of fact. The applicable guidelines: accessibility and life safety, 4.7.2, entrances, 4.4.1 and 4.4.3. Findings of fact: the proposed project is within the primary area of visual concern, and the proposed project is not incongruous with guidelines.
Thank you. We have a motion, and we now have a second. Is there any discussion on the motion? All right, hearing none. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, the motion passes. Would someone care to make a motion to issue a COA?
So moved.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None. COA is issued. Thank you.
Would you like me to proceed with the next one?
I was just about to say, now that we know why everyone was here, we can proceed to the next one. If someone might just close the door over there.
Thank you, Sarah. Okay, we're going to move on to 215 Pollock Street in just a second. (215 Pollock Street) to include the elevation of a non-contributing structure, removal of a door, and installation of a window, installation of larger windows, dormer modification, and a screen porch addition in the tertiary ABC. And this is Mr. Charles Francis's project.
Thank you.
You want to set us up?
And you thought they were all here for you?
No, I didn't. I was quite surprised when they showed up.
Okay, and I've got you right here. And I'm going to let you come in and take this thing. You just want to start right here? It should. Yeah, it should.
Okay, this is 217 Pollock Street. It's the innkeeper's cottage for what was Harmony House. It's now Benjamin Ellis House. And the structure in question is the one at the bottom of the drawing. It's flooded, and it has been gutted out inside, and the owners decided they wanted to make some changes to it. And of course, one of those changes is that we want to raise the house up so that we don't have this problem in the future. The other changes involve relaying out the interior of the space, changing some of the windows, placing an addition on the front in two parts, and creating a new screen porch on the eastern side. So with that, I'll see if I can move this around and maybe we can see some of the rest of it. Okay, this is the ground floor plan. Do we have any pointers or anything that we can use? Pointers?
I don't know of one.
Do you have any kind of pointers or anything? Okay. At the top of the drawing, we've got new staircase, and we have a new office addition and a new entrance addition. We're going to take out the initial front door and change that to a window, and then you can see down at the bottom on the right-hand side is the new screen porch. Second floor we're showing the reframing of the dormers so that instead of having two dormers, we would have one large dormer, thus increasing the square footage, usable square footage of the bedroom, relaying out the bath in the facility. That really doesn't affect you guys, but it makes for some changes because it allows us to access some attic space in the new, over the new screen porch. You can see on the top elevation the expansion of the dormer going all the way across, and on either side of the stairs is the new entrance and office addition. On my left-hand side, I guess it's yours as well, you can see toward the rear the screen porch. On the bottom drawing, the screen porch is on my left-hand side.
Need some help?
On the top drawing, the screen and porch is on my right-hand side, and you can see at the very bottom, we're adding some windows on the right-hand side, which would be in the new dining room space. Pictures?
Picture.
It, looking for those JPEGs.
Oh, hold on just a second. I might have them in paper copy.
I've got it.
You have paper copies?
No, I have it with me.
A couple of the pictures didn't transfer over in PDF, but he's got his iPad, so give us just a second. Is that up here? Sorry about that.
Will it fit on this?
Oh, yeah.
One?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. That is the structure as it stands today. As you can see, it's got, looks like 3 risers going up to it. We're increasing that, obviously, in order to raise the house. The next photograph shows the east elevation. That's the elevation where we'll be placing our new screened-in porch. And then that's the perspective drawing that we've done, showing the screened-in porch on my left-hand side, the left-hand side I believe as well as the expansion of the dormer and the new stairs and new office and entrance space. Questions?
What's the total height you're going to raise the building? You're raising the entire building?
Raising the entire structure, and we're going up on the count. 1, 2. Going up at least 2 feet.
Thank you.
And if this wasn't mentioned before, it's the structure we're talking about is non-contributing.
Yes, it was built in 1991 with an addition in 94.
Okay. Let's see. Commissioners, any conflicts of interest or concerns on application completeness?
No.
Okay. Very good. Is there anyone here who has received notice that would like to speak for or against the application? All right, very well. Morgan, would you like to provide staff findings and recommendations?
Yes, staff submits the following historic district guidelines as appropriate to this application. Design principles 311, 312, 314, 315. Modifications 321, 325. Additions 331, 332, 333. Statements of reason based on the information contained in the application in staff's judgment are: the proposed project is within the tertiary area of visual concern. The structure is a non-contributing structure, and the proposed project is not incongruous with the guidelines. Staff recommends the Commission approve the application for major exterior alterations at this time, citing the aforementioned guidelines.
Thank you very much. Okay, Commissioners, as we mentioned, it's non-contributing, so essentially we're not worried about it in the same way we are most of the applications in terms of the materials used. What we're looking at here are the proposed modifications congruent with guidelines in terms of overall form, proportion, height, those sorts of aspects. Any questions for the applicant before we? Most of us saw it in design review, I believe. Is that true? You weren't there. Okay, well.
I reviewed it though.
All right. Any discussion?
No, Mr. Chairman, I'm prepared to make a motion.
Okay, very well. If there's nothing.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we find the application for a certificate of appropriateness for 215 Pollock Street to be not incongruous with New Bern's Code of Ordinance, Section 15411 to 15429, and New Bern's Historic District guidelines based on the following specific guidelines and finding of fact. Design principles 3.1.1, 3.1.2, 3.1.4, 3.1.5, modifications 3.2.1, 3.2.5, additions 3.3.1, 3.3.2, and 3.3.3. Findings of fact: the proposed project is within the tertiary area of visual concern. The structure is a non-contributing structure, and the proposed project is not incongruous with the guidelines.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
All right. Any discussion on the motion? All right. Very well. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Motion passed. Would someone care to make a motion to issue the COA?
So moved.
Second.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion passes. COA is issued.
Moving on to 212 New Street. This is a request to include the construction of a wooden mechanical platform and the construction of a brick and iron fence in the primary ABC. The mechanical platform is located in the secondary ABC. And Mr. Pill's here this evening, so I'll turn it over to you, and he's got some additional pictures that you all should have that I passed out to you before the meeting started.
Thank you. My name is Rick Prill from 212 New Street. As Morgan indicated, we are seeking approval on two projects, the first being the construction of a pressure-treated wood stand in the secondary AVC to accommodate a home generator. The dimensions of the stand would be approximately 4 feet wide by 6 feet long by 6 feet high, and the intent would be to make the stand a little bit oversized based on what a typical home generator dimensions are, but the reason for that would be to act as a sort of a service platform. So if somebody does eventually need to do maintenance on it, they've got a place to stand while they're working on it. So it's a little bit larger than what a typical home generator dimensions would be. The second request that we have before you is in the rear property, but because our rear property fronts on Linden Street, it is considered sort of a secondary primary ABC, if that's the right terminology. We had prior to the hurricane a sort of a brick latticework fence along Linden Street. There are 4 sections to this fence, or there used to be 4 sections to it. Each section ranges in size or length of about 10 feet, 10 inches on the shorter side, up to 12 feet. And in each of these sections, we had the brick latticework characteristics, if you will. And as a result of the storm debris, as well as just the motion of the flooding, the brick inlay was substantially demolished or knocked down. I had mentioned, at the work session that you could actually kind of go over to the top of the brick lattice work and move it, because it had, I think, the structural integrity of it had diminished over the years to that degree. So it's not surprising that I think the flood took most of that lattice work down. What we are proposing to do is to replace that brick lattice work with architectural iron as an infill in each of the 4 sections. We do have a metal gate that's existing, and what we would propose to do is to take the kind of detail of the fence and replicate it in the fence sections. I didn't know if you wanted to take each of those projects independently, or I do have I can put on the overhead on the fence, but before we do that, if there are any questions on the stand, I'd be happy to answer those.
Well, just to answer your question about separate or together, the application includes both, so we will be ruling on both unless
Sure.
there's one you wanted to pull from the application, but that's not the case.
Okay. Well, let me just put this on the overhead in case there's any questions on this.
Okay. Commissioners, any issues on completeness of the application or any conflicts of interest? Okay, very well. Is there anyone here who has received notice that would like to speak for or against the proposed application? Okay, very well. Morgan, would you like to provide staff findings and recommendations?
Yes. Staff submits the following historic district guidelines as appropriate to this application. Fences and garden walls, 251, 252. Utilities, 231, 232. Statements of reason based on the information contained in the application and staff's judgment are the proposed mechanical unit, should I say, is located within the secondary area of visual concern according to the diagram on page 1-8. The proposed materials are appropriate. The proposed project is not incongruous with the guidelines. Staff recommends the Commission approve the application for exterior alterations at this time, citing the aforementioned guidelines with the conditions that the applicant screen the utilities from public view via fencing, vegetation, or similar site constructions. These are noted in Guideline 231, and paint the equipment to mounting surfaces to reduce its visibility, as noted in Guideline 232, and last, that the fence height be limited to 4 feet.
Thank you. And just to be clear, the staff recommendation for the fence limiting height is because we consider that a primary AVC because it's on Linden Street.
That is correct. According to the diagram on page 1-8 of the guidelines, the fence is in the primary, his mechanical unit's actually in the secondary because it passes that corner board.
Correct. Okay. All right, Commissioners, any discussion, any questions for the applicant?
Rick, did you plan to put anything around the platform for the generator?
I would more than likely extend the, lack of, I guess, proper terminology, the railing that is already around the condensers that we have, to extend that a little bit farther back to incorporate the new stand for the home generator.
Morgan, can we see the application on the laptop there?
Absolutely.
So we can see that aspect.
Absolutely. Okay, I'll just bring up my hard copy here. Let me zoom in a little bit so we can actually. And I thought I don't get this difficult. Did you want me to flip, excuse me, did you want me to flip to the mechanical unit first for discussion or the fence first for discussion?
I think mechanical unit based on your
Yeah.
question.
Here is what the applicant provided. This is the site plan, and I will zoom in on this so you all can see it. You'll see that the platform location goes right here behind this corner board, and the fence will go from here to here. And I'll let you have at it with the pictures. I'm going to zoom out a little bit. There you go.
So what you can see here is the kind of the back of one of two existing HVAC condensers. The new platform will essentially be a little bit higher than the existing platform, and it'll go back to this little kind of change in the siding. This is just a slightly different view of that. Again, this is the kind of the backside of one of the two condensers. The newsstand will be along here. And you can just, I think we have another picture that will show it better, but this is the existing railing. That what I'd like to do is to extend that back along the newsstand. And this will give you a little bit better indication of what that existing railing looks like. And I think it does a pretty good job of shielding the existing condensers. So by carrying that back, it should more than shield the home generator space. Again, just a slightly different view from Linden Street. Again, the two existing condensers, which you can only see the tops of them, and essentially from this point, you wouldn't even know that there's another stand back there.
Okay, thank you.
So to be clear, the railing that you were just pointing to there, if the commission follows staff recommendations to require the screening of that new unit, we would intend for that railing to be extended, and you're okay with that?
I'd be okay.
Okay. Very good.
That railing is made of wood, so you're going to do the same type of, the same exact type of railing?
Yeah.
Any other questions regarding the mechanical unit aspect? Anything on the fencing then?
You mentioned that you're replacing brick lattice work and fencing with now just fencing and brick posts, is it?
Well, if you could,
I didn't,
this is a picture
Posts
of
are
the
right there.
existing
They're in
columns.
okay.
So what we're proposing to do is, we used to have where this is depicting the architectural iron fencing. This used to be brick lattice work.
Okay.
And there are 4 sections that have the brick lattice work in between existing brick columns.
And now you're going to go
Columns are
with
still there.
fence.
So we're just looking to replace what was the brick lattice work with the architectural iron. It's a little bit hard to see on this, but this detail here is actually in the gate, so that's the part we're trying to replicate that. So
Okay.
there's consistency between the existing gate and the proposed iron fencing sections.
Understood. Thank you.
Okay, so the top photograph, that's the exact iron fencing you propose to install?
That's a rendering of what the finished product would look like.
Okay. Commissioners, for whomever makes the motion, please remember to include the submitted illustrations to append to the application, because they're not in there right now. Anyone have any other discussion or questions? Would anyone care to make a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I'll accept the motion. Find my little cheat sheet here, one moment. Okay. All right, I move that we find the application for a certificate of appropriateness for 212 New Street to be not incongruous with New Bern's Code of Ordinance, sections 15411 to 15429, and New Bern's Historic District guidelines based on the following specific guidelines and findings of fact. Fences and garden walls, 2.5.1 and 2.5.2, utilities 2.3.1 and 2.3.2. Findings of fact, the proposed project is within the secondary area of visual concern according to the diagram on page 1.8. The proposed materials are appropriate. The proposed project is not incongruous with the guidelines. And we do have some conditions. One, that the condition that the applicant screen the utilities from public view via fencing, vegetation, or similar site constructions as noted in guidelines 2.3.1, and that the equipment be painted that's attached to the mounting surfaces to reduce its visibility, as noted in guidelines 2.3.2, and that we also include the submitted photo as part of the application.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
And the fence should only be 4 feet.
After a second.
Okay.
Sending a second? Okay. Now, discussion on the motion.
I'd like to propose that we amend it to include that the fence be no higher than 4 feet.
I include that amendment to the motion.
And more specifically, 4 feet above grade.
4 feet above grade.
There's a horizontal component to the brick fencing as well.
I accept that amendment as stated.
And the other condition that you have about screening, shall we amend that to be specific about extending the railing that was indicated in the application?
Yes.
Okay. Any other discussion?
Could I ask one question, just a clarification? It's dealing with the height of the fence. If you look at the existing, there's an existing brick base that's down here, which is about a foot up from the sidewalk or the brick patio. What I had proposed in the application would be starting at this point, no higher than 4 feet. But I think your motion was to go no higher than 4 feet from the grade.
Correct. That's what the guidelines require for a primary ADC.
Okay. Because the existing brick inlay was actually up to that level. So I was looking to match
Well,
that or go...
Well, sir, as an alternative, if you'd like to rebuild the brick, latticework just as it was, then you don't even need to ask us. That's just repair. So...
But otherwise, then, we just go for the grade, go up 4 feet. Okay.
Mhm. Okay, we have a motion and a second. We've completed discussion. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, very well. The motion passes. Would someone like to make a motion to issue the COA?
So moved.
Second.
We have that motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, that motion passes. Your COA is granted.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Ricky. All right. Moving on to 213 New Street. This is a request to include the removal of door in the secondary ABC and the addition of flood vents, primary, secondary, and tertiary ABCs, and I'm going to turn it over to Sarah.
Hello. to talk about the flood vents and the door kind of separately, and I may request that we separate this application into two pieces. And let me just explain a little bit. At pre-app, we showed you the door on the side, and I think the door actually is original to the house, but the canopy was added by Alexis Cardelli, I don't know, 5 years ago, something like that. It leads down to a basement area that they are infilling. It helped contribute to water coming into the house during the hurricane, and along with these basement windows down here. And so the door, they very much want to brick up. It leads into, now it's going to lead into a closet, so it doesn't really matter, doesn't lead directly into the house anymore. So we want to brick it up and put a wood louvered door, just fix it in place so that it still looks like there's a door there. And if somebody wanted to in the future, they could just take out the block and open it back up and no problem. So that's one issue. I think that's pretty straightforward. The other issue are these little basement windows here. And the homeowner very much wants to install this product. And it's for a few reasons. One is that it's FEMA approved. And so when you go to get your flood insurance, there are certain requirements that FEMA underwriters use in order to get you a lower, to get you a lower price. And one of them is installing these FEMA-approved flood vents. These are an odd size window, and there are other vents that are commercially available that are metal that would fit in these openings, but they don't. We'd have to brick up part of the opening and put in a metal flood vent. This is plastic right here, but it does fit in this opening. It comes in various sizes. And what we are requesting, and we just kind of want to bring up this discussion because we didn't really have it at pre-app, is this product something that, given the recent flood, that the HPC would look kindly on for flood mitigation. Apparently it's something that has been approved by the Norfolk Historic District, and Morgan is looking into that issue, and we'll have some more information on that. The homeowners have also set up a meeting with various members of the city to discuss this at a later date. And so, I just kind of want to just bring it up. I know that that material is not normally something that is approved for replacement on a historic structure, but wanted to get your thoughts on it as something that would be an acceptable solution because it is readily available, inexpensive, easy to install, could be removed later, and doesn't alter the shape of the existing windows down at the bottom. And that's all I've got right now.
All right, very well, thank you. Commissioners, presume no conflicts of interest or any concerns about the completeness of the application? Okay, very well. Is there anyone here who has received notice on this application that would like to speak for or against it?
Rick Brill, 212 New Street. We live directly across the street from the applicant. We certainly don't have any problem with what they were requesting and would urge your approval of that.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Okay, very well. Morgan, would you please provide us with staff findings and recommendations?
Staff submits the following historic district guidelines as appropriate to this application. Windows, doors, and openings, 431. Contemporary materials, 553, 554. Statements of reason based on the information contained in the application and staff's judgment are: the proposed project is located within the primary, secondary, and tertiary ABCs. Staff is seeking guidance regarding flood vents in other historic districts. I did reach out today to City of Savannah, Charleston, Wilmington. It's a holiday week. Did not get any response, but I'm sure they'll get back to me. At this point, staff recommends the commission continue the public hearing for major exterior alterations at this time until technical assistance can be provided until the December 19th, 2018 public hearing. However, if the board would like to discuss, I am very willing to discuss the flood vents and their materials, but it's the pleasure of the board.
Okay, very well, thank you. Before we get into our deliberations, I do have some more information to add to the flood vent issue. And I understand the applicant's potential desire to perhaps sever the parts of this application if you want to go through with one and not the other just tonight. But I think we'll get there through discussion. The new information that I had to add to this is, number one, we've been hearing from comments to staff about how many residents have been told that these pre-manufactured FEMA-approved flood vents are the absolute only way that they will be able to continue their participation in the National Flood Insurance Program. That is actually not the case, because FEMA's guidelines, while they do allow these manufactured vents, their guidelines for compliance with the program are actually quite wide open. There are any number of things that any designer could propose as alternatives to these manufactured vents that may very well meet with the approval of historic district guidelines. And I'm just going to go over just those requirements so that we can all understand what we're talking about. And this is from the FEMA Technical Bulletin number 1, dated August 2008. It is entitled Openings and Foundation Walls and Walls and Enclosures. The minimum guidelines for compliant flood vents are the following. Each enclosed area, and in this case we'd be talking about a crawl space once the basement is infilled. If there were different compartments through different walls on the inside, they would each be determined to be their own enclosed area. Each enclosed area must have a minimum of 2 openings. The bottom of each opening must be no more than 1 foot above the higher grade, whether that's the outside grade or the interior grade, whichever one is higher. It could be, the bottom of that vent could be no more than 1 foot above that level. And that they be designed essentially so that water can freely move in and back out. And the word they use is that any screens, grates, grills, fixed louvers, or covers or devices must not block or impede the automatic flow of floodwaters into and out of the enclosed area. The other requirement is that you have at least 1 square inch of flood vent opening for every square foot of crawl space or enclosed area that you're attempting to protect with flood vents. So given those requirements, as I said before, there are any number of things that someone might propose to meet those guidelines. And would just strongly want to say that if some manufacturer of one of these vents or a manufacturer's rep is telling you that that's the only way to go, they're just trying to sell you their product. The other piece of information we have is that we did reach out to State Historic Preservation Office, and John Wood of the Eastern Division did write us back. He says that he agrees that the Commission has no obligation to approve an off-the-shelf manufactured flood vent. He also states that most of the commercial flood vents are visually inappropriate for use on historic buildings. Thus, a better option is to design a vent that is visually appropriate for a particular building and that provides a sufficient size to allow for the automatic entry and exit of floodwaters. Of course, you also need to have a sufficient number of openings in order to meet the square inch per square foot, and also to make sure you have more than one per enclosed compartment. He goes on to say this allows for the use of both louvered and brick lattice designs which are compatible with historic foundations, would be something that would meet HPC foundation guidelines and can be easily constructed by the foundation contractor. So that's the initial read that we have on this issue from State Historic Preservation Office. So if you do want to separate the application and hear only the door and hold on the vents in order to make a different proposal, that would certainly be understood. There's one more piece of information also. I just learned today that our city manager has asked Morgan to put together a public meeting in order to discuss this with downtown homeowners. I don't know when that will be, but...
Working on it.
Okay, but certainly going to be after this meeting. So we can't have the meeting before now, so that may be another reason to decide to, sever that portion and only hear the door part tonight, if that's where you want to go.
I agree, yes. Thank you for your information. Just as another piece to it, as I understand it, there is a difference in creating a wood louver as opposed to something that's FEMA certified when you go to get your flood insurance. When the adjuster, when they underwrite it, when they figure out how much it's going to cost, if you have those FEMA approved vents, it is a much lower amount. So it's, just having said that, I think at this time it's probably best that we wait until after we have this meeting that Morgan's going to set up, and if you wouldn't mind separating it out. But thank you for discussing it tonight.
All right, very well. And what I learned also from reading that FEMA document is that if you are designing your own, essentially, they do require someone with a professional license in order to do the calculations so that you can present them to that agency. But obviously you're perfectly qualified for that. Okay, so we've heard from the applicant to sever the application, and we will not be discussing the foundation vents on it this evening, but we'll be considering the door removal. And correct me if I'm wrong, but what you propose is you're going to brick up the opening. It'll be set back enough so that a pair of wooden painted louver doors can be inset in there to look as if they are the doors.
Absolutely. Yep.
Okay. Commissioners, any discussion on the application? Any questions for the applicant? All right, very well. Would anyone like to make a motion on it?
I'm sorry, I think I do have a question.
Okay.
In the statement of reason, it says that the age of the door to be removed is unknown.
I could not find any evidence to find a date, and we're presuming that it could be original to the home, but
It could be original. I don't know, the design on the side of the house, it's possible it is original, and the brickwork around it, as we discussed at pre-app, is pretty clean, so which suggests that the brick was done at one time and not toothed in. So it's possible it's original, and it seems appropriate that if somebody wanted to change the design later on, it'd be easy to undo.
Okay, thank you.
And I think that was the gist of the discussion at design review as well. And
Yeah.
I think it was at that point where you made the suggestion to add the louvered doors in order to, maintain that exterior look.
In that case, my question is answered.
Very well. Would anyone care to make a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I will. I'd like to make a motion that we find the application for 213 New Street, a certificate of appropriateness, a certificate of appropriateness for 213 New Street to be not incongruous with New Bern's Code of Ordinance, sections 15-411 to 15-429, and New Bern's Historic District guidelines based on the following specific guidelines and findings of fact. Windows, doors, and openings 4.3.1, and the findings of fact, the proposed project is located within the primary, secondary, and tertiary ABCs. The age of the door to be removed is either original or unknown. And that's it.
All right, we have a motion. Do we have a second? Okay. Any discussion on the motion?
So we're only voting on the door.
I was going to suggest that we add that as a condition just to clarify that the flood vent information that occurs in the application has been dropped and that we are only voting on the door.
Okay. I would like to amend the motion in that case to attach the following conditions: that the portion of the application to include the flood vents be removed from the application at this time and be followed up at a later date.
Very well. Any other discussion on the motion? All right. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Would someone care to make a motion to issue the COA?
So moved. Second.
Have that motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, both motions pass. Your COA is issued.
All right. And moving on to 417 East Front Street. This is a request to include the removal of shrubbery in the primary ABC, installation of a 4-foot tall metal powder hood fence, and reconstruction of a masonry foundation with solid piers and wooden louvers in the primary ABC, removal of a pool in the secondary ABC, replacement of French doors with a single garage door on an accessory structure, and installation of new masonry steps in the primary ABC. And this is Sarah's last project for the evening. I'm going to turn it over to her.
Hello again. This project, this is what the house looked like pre-hurricane, and the porch is now completely off. And the foundation, which was a solid concrete masonry, parged and painted, so it was just a solid wall. It got torn to bits. The shrubbery along East Front Street, it's actually already been removed. So Morgan had kind of approved that. They had a pool that needed to be infilled, and part of it, they couldn't get equipment in there, so they were nice enough to push that through. But I believe that it's a good change for this this beautiful corner lot in downtown New Bern. And they want to replace this shrubbery with a metal fence all the way around. So this is the existing gate along East Front Street, and they're going to come in and match it next to it with something that looks just like that. And it will go all around the property where the shrubbery was located. And that shrubbery was all the way along here. The gate is here, so it just replaces all of that and really opens up the house so that you can see everything again. Here's a picture of what the foundation looks like and what the status of the porch right now. So everything being rebuilt with brick piers, infilled with louvers underneath so that they won't have that issue again of, it was really breaking waves on that wall that really just destroyed it. And so the louvers are meant to actually come out, let in large amounts of water and take the pressure off that solid wall. The pool has already been infilled, and then in the rear they had this is what it looked like, the carriage house looked like prior to the storm and then after. And what they want to do is, originally the carriage house had garage doors, and then they were replaced with these French doors and transoms, and they want to go back to garage doors in that area. It's a wood product segmenting door, which seems appropriate. I think that's it. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Commissioners, any conflicts of interest or concerns over completeness? Very good. Is there anyone present who has received notice that would like to speak for or against the application? Yes, sir.
Excuse me, Rick Prell, 212 New Street. The applicant lives about 3 homes down from us. The removal of the hedges is great for us because now we have a greater visibility of the river, which we do appreciate. We fully support what the applicant is requesting, especially with regards to the metal fence to replace the hedges.
Thank you. Anyone else, any comments? All right, very well. Morgan, would you provide us with staff findings and recommendations, please?
Absolutely. Staff submits the following historic district guidelines as appropriate to this application. Fences and garden walls, 251, 252. Foundations, 411, 414. Windows, doors, and openings, 431, 432, 433. Entrances, 441, 442. Masonry, 511, 512, 514. Statements of reason based on the information contained in the application and staff's judgment are the proposed project is located within the primary, secondary, and tertiary ABCs. The materials are appropriate. The proposed project is not incongruous with the guidelines. Staff recommends the Commission approve the application for major exterior alterations at this time, citing the aforementioned guidelines.
Thank you very much. Okay, Commissioners, so there's just a few aspects. Pool's being filled in, shrubbery is being removed with a metal fence in its place around the perimeter on 2 streets. There's the garage doors, and then there's the porch foundation wall treatment. Correct?
What's the difference between those louvers and flood vents? Why is there a distinction?
Well, I couldn't say for sure. However, if and it's completely up to the applicant or the owner of the house to decide if they want whatever foundation treatment certified by FEMA.
I mean, but from our purposes, if we're debating the construction, the look of flood vents, why wouldn't we have the same question here?
Well, in this case...
They're not called flood vents in this case, but...
Well, correct. They're not called flood vents in this case. However, my understanding is either they are created to be removed by the owner or sacrificial when a storm comes through.
In this case, these louvers would probably not be certified by an engineer. I mean, they could be, and they could go through that process. It really is just however they determine the flood insurance rate, and so the homeowner would make that determination. It meets the guidelines for letting in and out the amount of water. I mean, it far exceeds that, really. And if they were to take them off during a storm, it would be even greater.
Yeah. I get that part. What I don't get is it sounds like we're going to have a lot of discussion about the construction and the look of flood vents.
Correct.
But here in this case, we're not calling it a flood vent, so we're not having any discussion of what it looks like. I mean, it looks fine, but.
Oh, no, we're going to have discussion over what it looks like because
We
that's our purview.
Okay.
The previous application, that was what it was because a very specific manufactured
Yeah.
product was offered
Yeah.
that had a certain look that we've already, got a ruling from SHPO that, is inappropriate for the historic district.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, what's being proposed here is a much better example of what could be proposed as flood vents for a lot of other applications. Something that is much more congruous with our guidelines.
Okay.
And the fact
So
that...
from the standpoint of historical appearance, this is much closer to what we'd like than the other.
Correct.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
also to comment, although you're not bound by precedent, the same louvers were approved at Hebe Tolson's house, the same concept, the removable ones, and they were perfectly acceptable.
Correct. And, it actually doesn't matter to us if the applicant wants to go through the process of having them certified by FEMA.
Yeah.
That's up to them.
That's it.
Any other questions for the applicant or discussion?
What is the material for the louvers? Are they wooden?
Yeah, conservative treated and
Okay.
And the fact that wood instead of plastic makes a difference.
Well, wood is an appropriate material for a contributing structure in the district. And the measure of that goes back to the guideline that requires that, the materials proposed would have been available at the time the building was constructed. So any comments or discussion on the fencing then?
Is the height 4 feet?
Is it in the application? Do you have the height listed in the application somewhere?
on the fence,
Yeah.
yeah, it's listed in there. It's like 4 feet. Or I think it's written in the
It's
application.
Must be
four,
in the-
she said four in
Yeah.
Yeah, there it
section
is.
one.
It's in the
Okay.
written description.
Thank you.
Okay, how about the garage doors then? Any discussion on that aspect?
Let's see. The door. No.
Is that accessory structure a contributing structure?
I'm not aware of that. Do we know that? Do we know when it was built?
What we're replacing it with is wood. So, if it were contributing, it would be appropriate material.
That's correct.
Okay.
I have a date of 1998 from Craven County GIS and Tax Office.
Okay, well, there you go. Any other aspect that anyone wants to discuss? If not, would anyone care to make a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion. I move that we find the application for a certificate of appropriateness for 417 East Front Street to be not incongruous with New Bern's Code of Ordinance, Sections 15-411 to 15-429, and New Bern's Historic District Guidelines, based on the following specific guidelines and findings of fact. Fences and garden walls, 2.5.1, 2.5.2, foundations, 4.1.1, 4.1.4, windows, doors, and openings, 4.3.1, 4.3.2, 4.3.3, Entrances, 4.4.1, 4.4.2. Masonry, 5.1.1, 5.1.2, 5.1.4. Findings of fact, the proposed project is located within the primary, secondary, and tertiary ABCs. The materials are appropriate.
Thank you. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
All right. Any discussion on the motion as written? Hearing none. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Very well. Motion passes. Someone care to make a motion to issue the COA?
So moved.
Second.
Have that motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, both motions pass. Your COA is issued.
Thank you, Sarah.
The next application is from my place of business, so I will need a motion to recuse myself if someone would make that.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, I'm stepping down.
And this is for 719 East Front Street. This is an infill construction request in the primary, secondary, and tertiary ABCs. And Ms. Andrea is with us tonight. I'm going to turn it over to her. Do you want to use the overhead?
The computer.
You want to use the computer?
Yes, please.
Just a second, I'm signing in.
All right.
You just need to go ahead and jump to the elevations.
Yes.
There you go. And you can just talk a little bit.
Okay.
You're welcome.
Hi, I'm Andy Mulholt from MBF Architects, representing Shannon and Corinne Core. As Morgan mentioned, this is infill construction. It is major work in a non-contributing structure. The proposed location is at the corner of East Front and Queen Street. You can see. And it is located directly across from Queens Point, just to give a point of reference. We have a site plan that shows how the building is positioned on the lot. We have a primary residence with a workshop located in the back corner and a garage located directly behind the residence. There is a 15-foot proposed setback, which is in line with the average front yard setback along the block, which you can see there's a hatch and a white line that goes across at the bottom of the map. That is the average setback for the block. The lot, there is a 6-foot privacy fence that goes along the back property line, as well as down in between that the property and the adjacent home next door, and it terminates about halfway down the residence. On the Queen Street side, there is a 4-foot fence, and then brick terraced garden walls. There is it is a concrete driveway, and then to the right-hand side of the residence, there is a raised concrete terrace. There are brick steps going from the garage area up to the concrete terrace, and then wood steps going from the terrace up to the house, in the back of the house, as well as the side porch. The stairs in the back left corner of the house are also wood, and the stairs leading up to the primary entrance along Front Street are brick masonry. So on the next page, we have elevations of the front and back of the house. The materials that we are proposing using: smooth fiber cement siding used throughout, with a smooth board and batten siding used in the vertical gables, which you can see up here. The house has brick foundations with inset brick masonry panels. The porches have brick masonry foundations with wood louvered panels. The windows are PVC. The exterior doors are fiberglass. The railings and handrails are aluminum. The decking is stained wood. The columns are synthetic material. There are two different types of roofing on this house. There's a contemporary standing seam metal roof with flat pans and contemporary hip and ridge flashings on the low slope roofs, which is above the porches. And then on the larger area of roof, it is fiberglass asphalt shingles. So on this front elevation, this is looking from East Front Street towards the house. We've used 1/1 windows. On the first floor, we've also added transom windows as well as a Chicago window in the middle. All the windows have synthetic, operable, and proportionate shutters with appropriate hardware. And each window type is tagged with a corresponding elevation to show what the shutters look like closed. And I just want to bring your attention to this front middle window set. There, when the shutters are closed, there's a removable center panel. We discussed at design review that that way the rest of the shutters are bifold shutters due to the constraints of the space between the windows and the columns. So this piece of shutter would be able to be put in to be completely operable. There's a screen porch on the left, a privacy fence, and then the brick terracing garden walls that we mentioned before. This is the back of the house. You can better see the brick masonry foundation with the inset panels that's on the main house. And also better see a section of the brick terrace garden walls. And in between the house and the garage, we have a roof. So that way it covers the stairway up from the garage to the main house. And on top of the roof, we have located the AC units and screened them from view with a wood louvered screen. And this is that way. This is to locate the AC units up above the flood plain, because I know that's an area of concern. This is an elevation looking from Queen Street back towards the house. This gives a little bit of a better visual of what the terracing garden walls would look like from Queen Street. You can see there's the columns with inset brick panels to mimic the foundation. On this elevation, we also have a mix of 1/1 windows as well as fixed windows. They also have the synthetic shutters that have the operable hardware. You can also see the AC unit screen that I've talked about on the previous elevation. You can see what it would look like from the street. As well as on the far right side, you can see the 4-foot wood fence. And this elevation is the opposite side of the house looking from the adjacent property. The windows on this side of the house are 1/1. No shutters because it is not a primary area of visual concern. You can also see how the garage corresponds and relates to the main house. These are elevations of the workshop, which is the building in the back left corner of the property. The same materials are used as from the main house. So this first elevation on the left-hand side is looking from the adjacent property towards Queen Street. The elevation on the right is looking from the main house back towards the back property line. You can see the 6-foot privacy fence on the left-hand side. I'd like to note that the garage doors are proposed to be steel. And this bottom left elevation is looking from Queen Street back towards the property. And the right-hand side is from the back property line looking back towards the main house. Here are elevations of the garage. So the first elevation is looking from the adjacent property towards Queen Street. Again, same materials are used and carried over from the main house, including the smooth board and batten siding and the gables. Similar proportion windows are carried over from the main house to the garage. The right-hand elevation is looking from the house towards the back property line. We've got synthetic columns that are supporting the corner of the roof, as well as a wood arch in between the columns. This bottom elevation on the left-hand side is looking from Queen Street back towards the property, and the right-hand side is looking from the back property line towards the main house. Here we have a picture that is a rendering to give a better idea of the scale, mass, and proportion of this residence in comparison to what is up and down the street as well as across the street. You can see Queens Point on the left-hand side. Also have another rendering going back down the street, looking back towards the property. Queens Point is on the right. And then we've got photographs on the right-hand side that are existing properties along East Front Street. And I would just like to note that nothing in this application changed between design review and tonight. Are there any questions?
Okay, I've got a few. I think I may have missed a couple of housekeeping steps here. Since the chairman has recused himself, do we have any other conflicts on the board? Okay. And has anyone in the audience received notice that might like to comment on the application? All right. All right. And let's see. We do have a matrix that we can use to go forward on this application. There's a lot here. And I think we are at that point where we can begin doing that. Why don't we go through these point by point, and I'll ask the members of the commission if they have any questions for the applicant. The first one, since this is infill construction, we're looking at the green boxes. Site and setting. Does anybody see anything with the development pattern, the idea of the open space, landscaping, fences, any of these things anyone has questions or comments about?
What is the restriction on fence height?
4 feet.
4 feet.
In the primary,
6
and
in the
I
side
believe
rear.
8 feet in the church.
6.
6 feet in the tertiary.
6 in the tertiary and secondary, 4 feet in the primary.
Thank you.
And this is a corner lot, so it's got,
It's 2 primary areas. I'll just ask some questions. Are your fences within the guidelines?
Yes, so the wood fence on the primary side and the back corner of the property is 4 feet. The brick terrace garden walls are also 4 feet. And then the privacy fence going on the back property line and back are 6 feet.
Okay. Any other questions or comments on site and setting?
The terracing,
Yes.
it looks like each tier is 4 feet, which gives the effect of 8 feet. Am I reading it correctly?
It is not quite that tall, but I understand your concern. Let me go to...
It would appear to be something in the order of 7 or 8 feet.
Yes.
Total.
And part of our reasoning behind that is after the hurricane, we raised the finished floor height. So we, with the brick terrace walls, it provides some visual interest and allows you to have the grade a little bit higher and not see as much of the foundation, since we raised the finished floor 1.5 feet. So it is 4 feet from as you can see here, the wall below.
What do you consider the base point? The street elevation or the elevation of the house is at?
The base point.
It looks to me like the fence is about 7 or 8 feet above the grade of the street.
Okay,
Is that true?
yes.
Yeah. Is that not a problem?
Essentially, though, the idea is it's sort of being built into the hillside. It's being
Yeah.
created by filling the site in order that, you don't have such a tall foundation.
Yeah. I see why you did it. The standard is
Well, if the standard is 6 feet and you're putting up an 8-foot fence, am I correct?
It is not quite 8 feet. Like I said, we measured from the terrace walls to help with the grading up, based on
And-
raising the finished floor elevation.
And this
Yes,
is the
it
fence that's going to be in the tertiary or in the
It is
second?
along Queen Street.
it's not
So-
one fence, though.
It's the
It's
No,
a
it's,
series of fences.
yeah, yes. And here, I'm not sure how can I switch to the,
There's a button right there, hang on.
okay, hold on.
Push up the button whenever you want to toggle back and forth. Yep, there you go. And then you can zoom in up there, okay?
Okay.
So this might show a little bit better in perspective. What we would be talking about is having, a small wall and then plantings, some
Yeah.
landscaping, and then another row of plantings,
Is it
and
a
then a
fence?
privacy.
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
Is it a fence or is it a railing?
It's brick columns with brick inset curtain wall.
Okay.
I'm not clear on this. Are you
No,
clear
no.
on this? Could you go back to the illustration you showed us with the actual fence itself on the left-hand side there?
Yes. So these are brick garden walls.
Okay.
So there is one that goes from, below the sidewalk level up, and then there's dirt with plants, and then another wall that comes up slightly higher, so that way you can raise the grade up and have additional plants in the next level. And then behind that would be the more screen wall, I guess is a good way to put it, just to provide more privacy back in this. Right behind here, I'm not sure if you can see where the mouse is a terrace area. So just to provide some privacy.
So are these like the garden walls that I see in the historic district? Brick-type garden walls, or is this, what material is that?
It's brick.
It's brick.
If this will help, sort of,
Yeah.
the first one that's right at the edge of the street, you really have to consider that as a retaining wall.
Okay,
Are you familiar with the Hollister House?
yes.
Okay, you know the big brick retaining wall that is right next to the sidewalk?
Mm-hmm.
And that's because the grade is so much higher right there. That's how they took care of that. Essentially, with all the fill that's in that area, that's what that first wall to the furthest left
Right,
is a retaining wall.
okay.
The way I would think about this is, we've had similar applications where this happened at that little house that's right next to the antique mall parking lot,
Right, across from,
where
right.
there's a change in grade right at the property line,
Mhm.
and they want to install a fence. Well, whose line do you measure from?
Okay,
What we determined was if he wanted to have a 6-foot privacy fence for his backyard, and his yard was the higher one, we really needed to allow him to have that 6 foot on his side so that he could get the
Right.
use out of the yard that way.
Mhm.
It meant that it was 7.5 or 8 feet on the other
On the other
side
side.
because of the drop.
Okay.
Essentially, that's how I look at this one.
That's the situation we have here.
Yeah, you've got that first retaining wall is, well, that's less than 4 feet.
Yes, I think it's 2 feet of that.
And Take, for example, the Hollister house again. If they proposed a fence, well, they've got that retaining wall right at the sidewalk. They proposed a fence on top of the retaining wall. Would you allow them 4 feet above that? Even though it's,
Right, understood.
so much higher above grade.
Okay.
And we think this is actually a better solution because it just keeps terracing them back so that at no point you have any plane that is above your head right at the sidewalk.
Commissioners?
I mean, visually, it's okay, just a little higher than
Okay.
normal.
Very general, looks okay.
All right. Moving on. Anything else with the site and the setting? Placement of accessory structures, the standalone carriage house garage.
Yes, a workshop and a garage.
I know you mentioned that the doors are going to be steel.
Yes, the garage doors. The man doors are going to be fiberglass, similar to the main house.
Is the steel going to be like powder coated or something, or?
Yes.
Okay. Any questions about the garage, anyone? Okay. Why don't we move to design attributes, form and rhythm, scale and proportion. About how many square feet overall? It's a large house, obviously. Nice house.
It is about 4,000, including the second story and the garages.
Okay. So it's similar to some of the other houses nearby.
Across the street, Queen's Landing.
Excuse me?
It's similar to Queen's Landing across the street. The house is next, a few blocks.
And got into materials yet. Talking out loud.
I
Yeah.
wanted to go back. The parking is behind the garage, correct?
In the garage. So we've got a workshop and a garage, so they would be parking in the buildings or on the driveway, which is concealed by the 4-foot fence.
Okay.
Okay. All right. In terms of the texture, this is what kind of, I heard you say board and batten material?
Yes, so smooth fiber cement siding, and then only in the gables, just to provide a little bit of visual interest, transition to the smooth board and batten siding.
Okay. All right. Anything else anyone care to have questions about in terms of the design attributes? All right. How about the components? Any questions on foundation, the walls, ornamentation, the windows, roofs, decks?
Are these in the foundation? Is this a brick inset?
Yes,
Yeah.
on the main house.
Right.
So the back elevation shows it a little bit better since there's the porch on the front, but we've got the inset panels.
Okay. And no ventilation?
We've got, so you can see this note 9 right here, that's a flood vent in the back. In the front, where the porches are, we've got the wood louvers, so similar to the previous application.
Okay.
Okay. Any issues with the roof? Okay. Anything about the decks? Any questions about, concerns about the decks? You got double-tiered porches?
Yes.
All right, and let's move on to the materials. I don't have any questions about them. Does anybody else have any concerns about materials?
I think they're fine.
think we are. Let me back up and ask an administrative question. Morgan, I may have missed something. Were you here for the full meeting? Did you get sworn in?
Yeah, she was here.
Okay, just double checking.
She was
You
hiding
probably
in the
were in the
back.
back. I didn't
Yeah,
see
I was
you.
in the back.
Okay, it just popped into my head. Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Let me see where I'm at. All right, are there any other comments from the public about this application? We're losing our public rapidly. All right. Commissioners, do you have any further discussion around this application? Well, if anyone would like to venture a motion.
Joe, point of order, you might want to hear staff findings.
Thank you. Staff recommendations,
Okay,
of
we're
course.
missing something, me.
Yeah,
One second.
Almost overlooked you.
Thank you, Dave. All right, we have a laundry list, so I'll go as quick as I can. Staff submits the following storage district guidelines as appropriate to this application. Development pattern 211, utilities 231, fences and garden walls 252, 253, accessory structures 261, 262, design principles 321, infill construction 343, 344, foundations 413, walls, trim, and ornamentation 424, windows, doors, and openings 433, entrances 444, roofs 454, contemporary materials 551, 552, 555. Statements of reason based on the information contained in the application and staff's judgment are the proposed project is located within the primary, secondary, and tertiary areas of visual concern. The structure is a non-contributing structure and infill construction. The proposed project is not incongruous with the guidelines. Staff recommends the Commission approve the application for major exterior alterations at this time, citing the aforementioned guidelines.
Thank you. If there's no further discussion of the application, does anyone care to make a motion?
Mr. Vice Chair, I would like to make a motion.
Thank you.
I move that we find the application for certificate of appropriateness for 719 East Front Street to be not incongruous with New Bern's Code of Ordinance, Sections 15-411 to 15-429, and New Bern's Historic District Guidelines, based on the following specific guidelines and findings of fact. Development pattern 2.1.1, utilities 2.3.1, fences and garden walls 2.5.2, 2.5.3, accessory structures 2.6.1, 2.6.2, design principles 3.2.1, infill construction 3.4.3, 3.4.4, foundations 4.1.3, walls, trim, and ornamentation 4.2.4, windows, doors, and openings 4.3.3, entrances 4.4.4, roofs 4.5.4, contemporary materials 5.5.1, 5.5.2, 5.5.5. Findings of fact: the proposed project is within the primary, secondary, and tertiary areas of visual concern. The structure is a non-contributing structure and infill construction.
Do we have a second on the motion? All right. We have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion on the motion? All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Can we have a motion to issue a COA?
So moved.
Second. All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. COA issued. Okay.
I'd like to say I think you did a great job with the completeness of this application. Your detail is great.
Must have a good architect.
Mr. Chairman, please rejoin us.
Morgan, is there any further business on the agenda?
Nothing else on the agenda. You can see the minor works list. I'm working on setting up that meeting. It's likely going to be the second week of December. I've just got to get all the gaps heard, but I'm going to get it set up. I will need a couple of volunteers to participate, so whoever wants to volunteer and tribute, please let me know.
I'll be there.
Got you. A quorum consists of 5 members, so I need 4 people or less who would like to attend. I will send out the details as soon as I have them. And that's about it for this evening.
They're requiring this to be a formal meeting of the commission, not just, is that the case?
It would be best not to, because then it would require a special meeting, notification, so on and so forth. If we just have 4 members there, it's not a quorum, so it's not a meeting, and it would be best, that way we can answer questions.
Understood.
Yeah, that way we can answer
Gotcha.
questions that homeowners have directly. I will be there, of course. This is a directive from the city manager that was given to me yesterday, day before yesterday.
I'd be happy to attend, but I'd also like to see if we could not have an educational session beforehand.
Okay? Okay?
I can do that. I'd like to be prepared.
I will be happy to do that. Perhaps what we could do then maybe is do a design review evening. After all the applications are done, we can have a sit down and a refresher for everyone about what is and is not appropriate. Okay? I will make it so.
Thank you.
All right. Anything specific on any of the minor works listed on the agenda you'd like to discuss?
No, all garden variety. We did have one very different one, National Avenue, 1508. They took off the vinyl siding to expose the original wood siding that's underneath. I was very happy to hear that. So she is working diligently on that bit by bit. Lots of storm windows, and that's about it. That's about it this month.
Very good. Is there anyone that would like to provide us with any public comment?
Hi, my name is Colleen Adams. I live at 1233 National Avenue. Okay, I was told to come to the meeting tonight by Mr. Jeff Ruggiero. I don't know if I pronounce this. Yeah. We have some concerns about this fence that's next door to us, and that's 1229 National Avenue. We've had issues with, we came to the meeting, we had issues with the fence they put up. Well, the fence is up. It's straight, but it's staggered. I have to look outside my kitchen window every day and see this staggered window, or a staggered fence. And it's also where they place the fence. I have debris and water from the neighbor's side coming onto my property. I have pictures to show.
By staggered.
This was a fence that we weren't sure where the property line was, weren't happy with the fence. Morgan's been a great help to us because, as I said when we came in here before, they get people from Craigslist to put it up, and that's exactly what happened. The thing goes like this. We have pictures of it. The water's running out of it because it disturbed all the ground.
We have video of that
we have
also.
video of that. He is not just that. You gave him approval to put a shed. He put this nice
Rubbermaid
on. Well, now he's put an illegal shed there, which Morgan's already cited him for. He has started a new driveway, which I didn't get to yet, but he also has refused to paint the fence. And like I told you when he came here, he's doing this to sell his house. And right after the meeting and when he got the fence up, the stuff from this tearing down the old fence is still laying there. Morgan has taken care of that. But we need help with this fence from you. Please help us. We want to live here a long time. They don't care. And when you see pictures of it, that fence was perfectly straight before. Now it's 5 or 6 different levels. And it's just, we spent hundreds of thousands of dollars in our house to look at this panel fence. And you got to help us.
And by staggered, you mean that the sections are...
Yes, it goes down like steps.
Okay.
And
And is that to follow grade, or...?
No, the grade was perfect. The other fence was fine. The line, no water came over. They didn't know what they were doing, so when they couldn't figure out which way to put it, they just put another section in and it was lower. They didn't follow grade.
They disturbed the land, and because of they disturbed the land, we're getting their water into our property. And so then we get water down in our basement.
Okay, so Morgan, you've seen each aspect they've described, correct?
Right. So there's a laundry list here, and I'll go ahead and start with the laundry list of the issues that's going on. I saw the little tiny Rubbermaid shack. It is there. They're going to get a notice of violation. Also, I saw the trash. That was the junk chain link metal fence. It was just thrown on the right side of the house. That's going to need to be removed. I'm going to speak to nuisance abatement about that. The painting issue. So I spoke with the city attorney about the painting issue. During the motion, it wasn't mentioned that paint will be required. However, in the application, they said that they would paint it. So they're going to have to paint it. And I spoke to the city attorney about it. He agreed that that was the contract with the city. That's what was promised. That's what has to happen. Driveway, I need to communicate with the owner about a driveway because I don't believe that was ever a topic of conversation when they came to us in May.
Yeah, we didn't.
That was not a topic of conversation. So I will touch base with them when I touch base with them about the shed.
Mm-hmm.
The staggered part, so what it is it follows the grade. These were the 6-foot manufactured wooden panels, so they're standardly made to be 6 feet. So they do stagger a little bit, but it follows the grade of the land. It does meet the requirement of 6 foot. There was one last issue regarding the stormwater. We had a similar concern about stormwater being dumped on someone's property because of pavers being installed. Spoke with the city attorney about it, and I have the email that stormwater issues are civil issues that neighbors have to resolve between themselves. But we can intervene on the shed, we can intervene on the paint, we can intervene on the trash, and we can intervene on the driveway. So that's 4 out of 5. Not bad.
The water comes from the sump pump.
Yeah, that's something that you guys should definitely look into as far as a civil issue. That's what's happening.
Who do we talk to? Because we can't talk to the neighbors about that.
You should get an attorney and have them send them a note, because stormwater issues are private party issues. If I'm dumping my junk onto your property, that's...
Can you look at this fence? Because this fence, the grades, it's perfect. The other fence was perfectly straight. It's just the people they had put it up. If you look at these pictures and see what we have to look at.
I mean, I've gone to
Certainly.
different homes and I've seen their fences, and they've had the same panel fences as our neighbors had. They're perfectly straight. They're not staggered. I mean, I've gone to different areas in the neighborhood, and they're all straight. And I know everybody's land is not straight. They have to fix it or make it that it would be straight.
Correct.
When these guys put it up, they tied one line to make sure it follows this way. You know, when you put a fence up, you tie a line at the top. Well, 2 of them didn't even wear shoes, and one of them was the boss, and he just stood there, and they said, "You need more dirt to put this fence up to make it right." He said, "Nah, just put it up that way." That's what
That's what our
That's what neighbors said.
homeowner
And
said.
that's when I kind of lost my temper, but that's okay. I didn't like the man when he moved in, and I don't like him now. You know, I think his wife is wonderful, and so is she. We babysat their kid, but he's not. He doesn't care what the house looks like, the moldy fences, the crooked fence. You know, just wants to do everything. We'd also like you to retract his permit for a shed for what he's done with his temporary shed.
Because on
Because
his...
he's advertising in the newspaper selling his house, oh, approval for shed.
Yeah, on the Zillow, it says approved, the shed was approved.
So, well, I'm trying to remember that application. A shed was included, and he proposed one that we found not incongruous, but he bought something else.
That is correct. It's probably maybe this wide and the same length, but yes, that little thing is not at all what was approved. It's in a different location, totally different material. It's something probably might have been bought at Lowe's, but it is not what you guys approved.
Yeah.
It's plastic, it's
Yeah,
Rubbermaid.
yeah, it's
Yeah, and as Morgan said, the remedy there is
notice of violation.
is a notice of violation with the COA that was issued. They obviously didn't build everything the way they promised.
Well, he never gave you a final drawing, which you're supposed to do.
He did. He provided it to us. Yeah, he did. The shed that was approved has not been constructed yet. The fence, he mentioned using the wood panels, although we weren't overjoyed with it. We have no reason to stop him from using the wood panels because it's wood. But we can
Now,
intervene.
the shed itself, I mean, is he claiming that the Rubbermaid shed is a temporary thing, or?
Not sure yet.
Okay,
Not
well,
sure yet.
you know,
It's got to go.
it could be part of the application and simply never get built, and that's not really our business. But if it does get built, it has to be built according to whatever we approved.
Right.
So it essentially, you know, a way to remedy that without him building a new shed is to simply take away the existing one.
Yes. So the notice of violation will go out. They'll have 30 days to make the corrections. The painting, not sure how long we can push that. I'm going to research that for everyone to find out how much longer they'll have. But the shed's going to have to go. And the driveway is going to have to go through at least a minor work.
Right.
And I'm going to make sure that he's aware of that. So, and let's see, was that everything? The paint, the shed, the trash? We'll deal with that
Okay.
with nuisance abatement.
Yeah. Well, like Morgan said, that's 4 of the 5 issues that can be dealt with administratively with a notice of violation. The water issue isn't something that we can really help you with.
Can you look at this fence?
Yes, sure.
Show pictures of the fence.
Do you want to put on the overhead? Here, I'll put it
Yes.
up here. It'll just make life easier for everyone.
See, he came in with this elaborate drawings and everything, and we just tear up the pictures.
Hang on just a second.
No,
Switch,
it's just-
switch over for you. Yeah, you can put it right there and you can zoom in and out with these right here.
Okay. Okay, this is the shed, how it starts to stagger down. There's another one that's going down also. This is what the bottom of the fence looks like, where the water is coming underneath from his property onto mine. I had grass there, now it's all,
All the soil's washed away.
yeah. And here's another one, I mean, we have critters going under there,
Where's the one?
right here. This is the one, this is the whole length of the fence, and you can see how it staggers down.
It just keeps going down and down.
And here's
down.
another one of the panels,
And it's not because of the lay of the land, it's because of the,
how they put it in.
how they put it up. And they just, where there was a stone, they took out a stone or something was there, they just put it lower. I mean, it's just,
I mean, there's different areas where I have gaps, well, from their fence going onto my property.
Well, it's difficult to tell how appropriate the stepping is without, you know, being there to assess the, you know, the grade condition. But stepping a fence like that in order to, you know, maintain a similar relationship with grade as it goes along is not an uncommon thing.
you took straight on.
I have it on my iPad.
That's the one that.
That's,
There's no one that's straight. I mean, if you would have watched, they were doing this on a Sunday night in the dark. That was the last day they put the fence up. They started Saturday morning, then they came back Sunday in the afternoon, and it was dark out, and they were still installing the fence. It was a long one.
that's, that's the whole length of the fence. And that's a closer shot.
And it's not an inch or so, it's inches. I mean, it's, you know, there's,
See that dark spot? That's the water that's coming from his side, and it's laying under there and comes under under the fence.
Well, what grading condition changed that the water flows from his property to yours that didn't exist before?
when the wrought iron fence was up there, they had bricks along the wrought iron fence.
And concrete.
and concrete.
So it was a sort of retaining wall, and that was removed.
He removed it.
Yeah.
And instead of putting soil back in there, where he took all the holes out, he just built this on top of it, instead of doing it right and installing it right. I know this sounds petty, but I gotta look at this every day. And we really spent a lot of money in the backyard of this house. And, I mean, it's only 4 inches. I knew the property line was close, it was 4 inches. He has never come over the other side to edge the grass or anything. I don't want him there. But that's what it
Yeah, he
looks like. He doesn't want to paint it. She's got to go after him to paint it. He doesn't want to clean up the other stuff. That's been there for 6 months. He does nothing. All he wants to do is sell his house. And that was just some lipstick on a pig to make it easier to sell. That's all it was. Now, I feel sorry for the new owner, because I remember saying in front of you guys, I said, wait till the first bad windstorm comes and the panels will blow over. Well, when we had the hurricane, the panels blew over already on a fence that was only up a couple times because it put up, terribly.
That's been up there since June, when they initially tore out the metal fence. That's what I look outside my window.
I would win every day. We have to look at that. That's the gate for the end.
Well, I think as we've said, the things that we can help with, Morgan's already taking action on, and unfortunately that's going to, take an administrative process, and they have to have time to respond, like she said.
What about the installation of the fence? It's not historic, it's not right, it's not by a permit, it wasn't put up by licensed people. I mean, there's nothing about that fence that's right. And I know it's Thanksgiving Eve, I know I'm keeping you here and I feel bad, but this house is going to get sold and I'm going to be stuck with this. And while he still owns a house, we need to do something. That's what I'm worried about.
And this is something that has come up in the past, but we don't really have an sort of control arm for the HPC is quality control of construction. My personal opinion is that if something is constructed so poorly that it does not resemble what was promised or what was in the application, then that could constitute the same sort of problem with the COA as any other noncompliance.
It's just like when he showed you the pictures of it, they had the fence pointed out to show how they're going to wipe the fence and then decided not to paint it. And that's not put up like they said. They said be put up sturdy, put up right, put up straight, and it's not. So that's why we're here. We need your help.
We also had an issue with the panel fence they put up with no wind coming through, air coming through, that it would fall down. During the Hurricane Florence, it did come down. That's the new fence that they just put up, and that did fall down, which we knew that was going to happen. And our fence did not blow down because we have air for the wind to go through.
And a couple days after Florence, they had some trees cut down over there. Well, Mr.
McCoy.
Mr. McCoy that helped us with some trees. He told them they couldn't cut this one tree down. 2 days after, 3 days after Florence?
Yeah.
They cut it down. Now we have his wife posted a picture, no damage to her house, and
Yeah, and the tree's up there.
the tree's up there.
And 2 days
Nothing wrong
later,
with
it was
He
cut
just
down.
He just wanted to cut that tree, so he did. We've been working with somebody else on that. He does what he wants to do. And
I mean, we're like Eric said, we're not petty, but what's right is right. I mean, if we would have done that, someone would call on us.
When we cut the 3 bad trees out in our yard, we got permits for them. The fire chief came out and looked at them and said, oh my God, that's a good idea. And we did it. We went by the law. He does what he wants to do. He gets a permit for a shed, he just puts a shed he wants to up there. He puts a fence up, he puts a piece of junk up. And I gotta live with it. He won't, because he's gonna sell that house. Somebody's gonna buy that house. But we're gonna be stuck with it. And I don't want to fight with the new neighbors. I'm just so glad he's moving. I mean, thank God.
Understood.
What do we do?
And we appreciate you coming to us with the information. And I think Morgan has everything she needs to move forward on all the aspects that relate to what we can do.
Yep.
Oh, Morgan, can we do something about it being like this? You can't put up a crooked fence. It's just
It seems to follow the grade, but I would have to get on Mr. Scherer's side of the property, and which I would have to ask permission to do, and then pull the tape. And if it's 6 feet from grade on his side, then it's 6 feet. Like you said, if it was constructed so poorly that it doesn't resemble what was promised, that's different. But stormwater, that's civil because it is dumping onto yours. But the paint, the shed, the trash, got that. We got that.
she's been nothing but great to us. I think.
It's just hard. It's hard sometimes, but you guys, we will take care of it. They'll have 30 days. There's a section of the ordinance that talks about the fines that are levied if anybody wants to look at it. But the grade, it seems to follow. But I would have to go on the other side to look. Maybe
What do
they
you
would
mean
do
by
that.
it follows the grade?
It appeared to follow the grade of the ground because it does appear when I went over to the house that it slopes down a little bit towards the back end. I mean, I'm not a surveyor, but it just appeared that it did.
And that's what we mean by following the grade, so that,
Yeah.
But who puts up crooked fences?
well, if by crooked you mean that it doesn't have a consistent top edge line, that's what we mean by following grade. So that it's close to 6 feet above the grade at any point, and it can be, and usually it's according to, that pre-manufactured module, whatever it is, 8, 10 feet, whatever.
Right. But those things will be taken care of. And the driveway, forgot to mention the driveway too.
Right.
Yeah, he has a driveway that's a cemented driveway that's there. And on the left-hand side of the house, where the illegal shed was put,
Mhm.
they just drive over the grass.
city just put a new sidewalk.
Yeah, we got new sidewalks, they're beautiful. But he just drives over the grass and parks beside the house on that side, where it's not a driveway. He just made his own, and the city, between the curb and your sidewalk, you have grass there. Well, there's no grass there, because he just drives up over it. He just decided to make a new driveway. I mean, you just can't do that.
Well, if he builds anything, then certainly that's in violation because he didn't get a COA first.
Well, he's not gonna spend any money because he's moving. That's why he put up a cheap fence. That's really, those things are big things.
Well, I think Morgan has everything she needs to move forward on it administratively.
Yep. Just give me about 30 days because they have to respond, and I'll send a letter certified and first class, and off we go.
All right, thank you very much.
Yep.
No,
Thank you.
Thank you, and sorry to keep you. Have a very nice.
Y'all have a great
You
Thanksgiving.
too.
Bye, guys.
Good Thanksgiving.
You too.
All right, failing anything else on the agenda, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes.